Silent Invaders! A true story about native, non-native, and invasive plants in Florida.
Keywords to watch for: aquatic plants, immersed plants, floating-leaved plants, hydrilla, invasive plants, native plants, natural areas, non-native plants, submersed plants, terrestrial plants, water hyacinth. There is an invasion taking place in your neighborhood right now. We need your help in finding these silent invaders. With a little knowledge, you can learn to spot them. You can start by checking out the terrestrial plants. Florida has thousands of them, and some are pretty cool. You'll know they're terrestrial plants because they live on dry land. Cardinal flower, firebush, slash pine, pigeon grape. If you're lucky enough to live near a lake, river, creek or wetland, be sure to look for aquatic plants. Our state is home to hundreds of aquatic and wetland plants. Aquatic plants live entirely in, on or underwater. Immersed plants have roots underwater, with part of the plant sticking above water. Floating-leaved plants have leaves that float on the surface. The roots are not always anchored to the bottom. Submersed plants grow with their roots, stems and leaves completely underwater. About 3,000 of Florida's terrestrial and aquatic plant species are native plants. Native plants were here before Columbus arrived. For thousands of years, native plants adapted themselves to Florida's natural environment. All sorts of animals and insects rely on native plants for food and habitat. Florida's wildlife and climate keep native plants from becoming too abundant. These native plant communities began to change, however, once people began travelling to and from other regions, countries and continents.
Bonjour. Hola.
As people arrived from faraway lands, they often brought plants to grow in their new homes. When a plant is taken beyond its original historic range and introduced to a new area, it's known as a non-native plant. Coontail plants are non-native to South Africa. Our native and desirable tape grass is an unwanted non-native plant in Australia's rivers. Hydrilla, from Southeast Asia and Africa, is non-native to Florida and the United States. Australia's Melaleuca trees are non-native to Florida. In Florida, about 1,000 plant species have arrived since the time of Christopher Columbus. How do non-native plants get here? Some non-native plants are introduced accidentally when they become mixed in with leaf litter or farm crops. Some non-native plants hitch rides in the ballast water of ships, in plane cargo, on boat trailers, and even on tyres. Of course, nature has its own way of moving seeds and plants to new areas. Many non-native plants were brought here on purpose for agriculture or other uses.
And here we have a rare plant.
Most have proven to be extremely beneficial. However, more than 100 non-native plants are causing serious problems in Florida. For example, kudzu from Eastern Asia was brought to the southeast region of the United States to help control soil erosion. Water hyacinth was brought from South America for decoration. It quickly began covering rivers and lakes. In the 1890s, water hyacinth covered the St. Johns River in northeast Florida. Hydrilla was introduced in the 1950s for use in aquariums. No one knew the damage it could cause. Why should we care? When non-native plants arrive, they can outgrow or replace native plants that are supposed to be here. The tuberous sword fern is non-native. The netted chain fern is native to Florida. This lake is 8 feet deep and full of hydrilla, a non-native plant species. There's not much room for native plants here. Wildlife nesting areas can become covered up, preventing these animals from reproducing. Instead of many different kinds of plants, we could end up with just a few invasive plant species. What is an invasive plant?
Oh no!
When a non-native plant species is able to spread on its own, causing environmental or economic harm, it's considered invasive.
Red alert! Red alert!
Non-native plants can become invasive when they have no natural predators in their new habitat. This beetle keeps alligator weed under control in South America. Here's an example of a non-native climbing fern invading a natural area in South Florida. Do you think this plant might be invasive?
We interrupt this program to bring you a definition.
Natural areas are lands that have not been developed for agriculture, business, or housing. This tree hammock in the Everglades is completely smothered by an invasive climbing fern. Here's an aerial view of the same invasive plant. Boating, swimming, fishing and other water activities are made impossible by some invasive plants. Where would you rather swim? Canals, ditches and flood control structures can become filled with invasive plants, which can cause flooding. Here's an example of a working flood control structure. This is an example of a canal taken over by hygrophila. That's why it's important to learn more about native and non-native plants in our own natural areas. Do you recognize some of these native aquatic plants? American lotus, tape grass, pickerel weed, duck potato. What about these invasive plants? Water hyacinth, torpedo grass, water lettuce, wild taro, hydrilla. You can help. Learn to identify which plants are desirable natives and which are invasive non-natives, especially in your area. Never empty aquarium plants or fish into a lake, pond, or drainage ditch. They might be silent invaders. Alert family and neighbours about invasive pest plants and the problems they can cause. Inspect your yard, woods, garden, school or boat for invasive plants and dispose of them. Dispose of invasive plant waste in household garbage that does not get composted. Why? Many seeds can withstand drying and freezing. Landscape with native plants or non-invasive plants. Ask your nursery or garden centre for them. Volunteer to help remove invasive plants in parks and natural areas. Remember, when we help get rid of invasive plants, we make it possible to enjoy Florida's beautiful natural areas.